Morning, everyone. As Alfred said, I am Justine Herrera, Senior Director of Academic Programs, and it is my privilege to introduce and moderate today's faculty panel. So, panelists, I'm just going to introduce you up. Come up, please. Professor Stephen Cohen, Professor Sheila Foster, Professor Lisa Sachs will be joining us on Zoom. Professor Jason Smerdon, and Professor Beizhan Yan. Dr. Stephen Cohen is Senior Vice Dean of School of Professional Studies and is a professor in the practice of public affairs and the School of International and Public Affairs. He is also director of the MPA in Environmental Science and Policy, as well as the director of the MS in Sustainability Management. Dr. Cohen is also the director of the Columbia Climate School's research program on sustainability policy and management. In addition, Dr. Cohen served as the executive director of the Earth Institute from 2006 to 2018. Dr. Cohen teaches several courses each year, including one of two required courses within our MS in Sustainability Management program. His most recent book, co-authored with William Imek and Dong Guo, Sustainability Metrics and Sustainability Management, The Role of Sustainability in Competent Management, is forthcoming publication by Columbia University Press in 2025. Professor Sheila Foster is a professor of climate within Columbia Climate School and is a leading scholar of environmental and climate justice. She is known for her articles and books in the field, most notably From the Ground Up, Environmental Racism and the Rise of the Environmental Justice Movement. Her research spans a broad range of topics, including innovative resource governance regimes, land use policy, and the role of subnational governments and local leaders in addressing cross-border challenges such as climate change. Throughout her career, Professor Foster has worked with local governments, federal agencies, and public officials on various issues related to environmental and climate justice. Professor Foster currently teaches Climate Justice, Theory, Practice, and Policy, a core course with two of our graduate programs. Professor Lisa Sachs? No, okay. Next is Professor Jason Smerdon. He is a professor of climate within the Columbia Climate School, co-senior director for education and co-director of our 2-year MS in Climate program. He teaches courses on climate, environmental changes, and sustainable development to undergraduate and graduate students. Professor Smerdon also lectures widely in public and private settings on the subject of climate change and its social dimensions. Professor Smerdon's research focuses on climate variability and change during the past several millennia and how past climates can help us understand future climate change. Professor Smerdon teaches quantitative methods for climate applications, a core course within 2 of our graduate degrees. And finally, Professor Beizhan Yan is the co-director of the MS in Sustainability Science program and a Lamont Research Professor at Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory. At Lamont, he has established an environmental organic geochemistry lab with the ability to extract, isolate, and identify organic contaminants and biomarkers from environmental and biological samples. He has successfully traced metals and aromatic hydrocarbons in New York City's waters and air and linked exposures to these air pollutants to pediatric asthma outcomes. He is also leading a collaborative study to examine the association between pediatric respiratory outcomes and air pollutants in Beijing, China. He is also leading collaborative studies measuring microplastics and nanoplastics in New York City waterways and air, linking these exposures to various adverse health outcomes, including neurodegenerative diseases and developing engineering solutions for mitigating plastic pollution. All right, so we're gonna go back to Zoom. We have Professor Lisa Sachs. Lisa Sachs is Associate Professor of Professional Practice at the Climate School and Director of our MS in Climate Finance program. Professor Sachs also serves as Director of the Columbia Center on Sustainable Investment At CCSI, she established and oversees its interdisciplinary research and advisory work on the alignment of investment law, practice, and policy with the Sustainable Development Goals. She is a globally recognized expert in the ways that laws, policies, and businesses practices shapes global investment flows and affect sustainable development. She works with global stakeholders across sectors to understand the interrelations of investment flows and sustainable development and influence investment policies and practices to promote the SDGs and the Paris Agreement. So please join me in welcoming our panelists. So panelists, I have a few questions and then we will open it up to the audience. My first question is, all of our climate and sustainability programs offer unique access to faculty, academic, and professional opportunities. What opportunities do students have to engage in research or practice within your respective programs and/or courses? So I'll start with you, Dr. Cohen.
Well, there's two different programs, environmental science and policy and sustainability management. So I'll try to combine them if I can. So both programs have client capstone workshops. And if you go to the websites of those programs, you'll see every workshop project we ever did, and then the videos of the students doing their class version of briefings. They also brief their clients. That's one example. Half of the students in sustainability management work full-time, and so they're getting all the practice they need. They're coming up to try to accelerate their career with additional education in sustainability management. But both sets of students that are full-time have access to my own research program. We hire a bunch of interns every year in sustainability policy and management. At SEPA, there is Jason Bordoff's Global Energy Center, and we send interns there. We also have people working directly in the programs. In the case of sustainability management, we have about 2,500 alums now, and about 3/4 are in the metropolitan area, and they're frequently hiring our own alums as well as interns while they're in school. So there's plenty of those kinds of experiences. I think we're very professionally oriented, very practice oriented. These two programs are almost self-consciously not academic. Sustainability management in particular, which is where many of the electives taken by ESP students reside, is the most applied practical program at Columbia, in that very few of the faculty teaching in it are academics. Most of them are practitioners. In sustainability management, nearly all of our courses are offered after 6 p.m., and so many of the sustainability practitioners in this region come up and teach. We are ferociously connected to the job market, and for both programs, the outcome measure that's most important to us is that you should have a better job when you leave than the one you had when you arrived. And so practical experiences, research experiences, but also experiences in decision analysis for functioning organizations is really our emphasis.
Thank you, Dr. Cohen. Professor Foster.
Sure, it's great to see everyone. Good morning. So I think there are three key opportunities that I think are extraordinary in terms of what Columbia offers in the Masters in Climate and Society and the Masters in Climate Science. One, I think, which is unique, is cross-registration across Columbia. I've taught at universities, the last one, Georgetown, where that was not possible. But I have an appointment at the law school as well as an affiliated faculty, and so I teach, in addition to climate justice, law and policy courses. So my climate students can take courses at the law school, including my course. And I also have students from across the programs in some of my other courses, like climate law and policy, not climate justice, because that's a core course just for our programs. And students take an array of courses across campus, which I think deepens their interdisciplinary focus. The second thing is applied opportunities, in addition, I think, to the applied course that you get. A number of courses have an element of applied. So, for instance, I've taught an energy justice course as a practicum and a capstone. and have worked with FERC, which is the Federal Regulatory Authority, over electricity markets, the Energy Law and Policy Center. I've had students work on various projects, a film impact campaign for a film that's coming out about blackouts. So students really connect and get their hands dirty on an applied problem. And their internships and capstones, et cetera, as well as courses that take you to site visits. And then third are research opportunities. There's a departmental research opportunity at the climate school. I've used one. I co-chair the New York City panel on climate change, and I also sit on the Environmental Justice Advisory Board. So I've used a DRA, a climate student, to work with the city and doing some very important work around climate science, but also policy and creating a new climate plan for the city. So anyway, I'll stop there. Those are just some examples.
Professor
Is it my
Smerdon?
turn?
Yes, your turn.
All right, good morning, everybody. How y'all doing? Awake? Had your coffee, taking notes? All right, good. I think we're all going to say similar things in terms of what we've built in programmatically to all of our programs. So you're going to hear about internship opportunities, formal and informal. We have the capstone workshop courses that exist across our programs. In our 2-year master's program, there's the summer internship opportunity, which is something that you can get involved in. But I want to add a little bit of different context, which is no matter where you're at, you could build these things into a program. But if the experiences and the capacity wasn't there to actually find the projects that you do for all of these things, it would be a bit of a dud. And so what I want you to understand about what we have here at Columbia is our capacity in sustainability and climate, specifically within that space, is probably the largest of any institution in the world. You can argue with me about that, but I think we're close. And what that means is tons of scholars here doing research and academic work that you can engage. And so that's the substrate in which you step. So we have all these programmatic opportunities for you, but what we really are offering is this immense capacity in these spaces for you to engage and connect to. And that's what you really need to think about here. There's all kinds of different ways that you can engage research, and you can do that. There's ways that we build it informally. But I think even more significant is our students come here, and if they're ambitious and they're proactive, they find opportunities to engage. And there are a tremendous number of opportunities here for you. And if you really want to step into a place where that is an aspect of abundance, Columbia is where to come in this climate and sustainability space.
To me? Good morning, everyone. So yeah, I agree with all you just mentioned. And so what we actually, the program, Sustainability Science program, is a relatively small programs and also relatively young. However, this course was mainly being taught by the researcher professors at the Lamont Doherty. For example, we have about 25 faculties. About 2/3 was actually from Lamont Doherty, and who is actually soft money researchers and who is keep writing the proposals, supporting their research as well. So the great things of that one, they are actually can be really, like looking into the front lines of the researchers and then teach you the newest things that you need to know and providing you some solutions. And another thing is that we also have since are very small programs, so the students can get a chance to actually go to interactive professor a lot of time. And then you actually can go to their program. For example, I have 5 students who's actually from those programs getting into my program, getting my research there. For example, I'm doing the micro and nanoplastic work. And I also have the engineering solution part, and like developing the filters for remove the microfibers from the like washing machines. And so we're doing all these things together. So the student comes to, and then they say, I am really interested in your project. Could I be in your lab? Of course, then we actually have, currently I have 5 students. One is looking for the political pollution policy, and one is actually using the AI technologies they are learned from in the undergrad students, and helping us to developing this hyperspectral camera to identify the plastics. So I'm saying that we have a lot of opportunities in this program. So if you come, of course, that we can talk about more. Okay, thanks.
Professor Sachs.
Great. Hi. I'm greeting you from Hong Kong, where we're celebrating Halloween evening already. Thanks to Alfred and the admissions team for letting me join you. I didn't want to miss it despite being in Hong Kong. I think what I would add, which is really based on what I'm here, is that I'm first of all extremely privileged to direct the climate finance program, although even more privileged to teach in all of the climate school master's programs in the mitigation class. I, as was mentioned, direct the Columbia Center on Sustainable Investment, where we do very applied work all over the world in trying to align finance and investment with sustainable development, including the climate goals and energy transition. I'm here in Asia because we're working a lot on the energy transition throughout Asia with development banks, with the private sector, with the energy planners, with the governments. And our students work hand in hand with us on these projects through CCSI and through applied research opportunities in the master's program. So the thing I would just add to all of the wonderful opportunities that my colleagues have listed before is just the opportunity to be really engaged in practical projects, especially around the world, since much of our work is at CCSI is international. So looking forward to discussing more.
Thanks, Professor Sachs. So you all have actually answered my second question. So I'm going to jump over to my third question. Can you share a moment in your career that reaffirmed your commitment to studying climate, sustainability, and environmental science, and what helps you stay hopeful about our ability to manage the climate crisis and ultimately avoid the worst predicted impacts? And Professor Cohen, I'll start with you.
Well, let me cite a couple of things instead of one. The first was I was involved in developing the Superfund Toxic Waste Cleanup Program about 45 years ago. And one of my experiences in that program was we committed to Congress we were going to clean up a lot of toxic waste sites around America. And after the bill got passed, I sat down in a meeting with some soil scientists, environmental engineers, and I said, okay, so when do we get going? And they said, we don't know how to clean up toxic waste sites. Nobody's ever done it before, and it probably can't be done. So we had to pivot, and instead of trying to clean up sites, we tried to get people out of pathways of exposure to toxic waste. And in the 40 or so years, about 50 million people have been moved away from these pathways of exposure, largely by containing the toxics. But the other thing that I think is actually more significant, I write a blog every week, and this past week I was focusing on the progress New York City has made toward environmental sustainability. And, you know, it's sort of slow and steady wins this race. So I often talk about New York City's transitions economically. It started as a trading city, became a manufacturing city. Now it's a service city, meaning that 90% of the GDP of New York City is in services. Education, healthcare, finance, technology, you name it, it's happening here. And tourism. We now have about 60 million tourists a year coming into New York City. So those transitions were largely invisible. In 1950, 95% of the clothing worn in America was made in New York City. Now it's about 1%, but almost all the clothing that's designed in the world and marketed is marketed by the now 130,000 people working in our fashion industry compared to the 500,000 garment workers. We deindustrialized and didn't realize it was going on. That's the point I'm making about transition. So now we are transitioning into environmental sustainability, and there are several indicators. The city has become more energy efficient. It already is the most energy efficient place in America because of the way we rely on mass transit. But the second thing that's starting to happen is a lot of the built environment in New York City is being built for climate resiliency and for flood resiliency. Now, yesterday, we saw an example of some of the progress we still need to make because we still have massive drainage problems because of extreme weather events. But the progress, you know, Local Law 97 to decarbonize our buildings. One of our ESP graduates, Steve Caputo, is in charge of New York City's effort for the city government itself to decarbonize its own buildings and vehicles. When he started the job 7 years ago, he had 5 people. Now he has 65 people, and they've made incredible progress. And so I'm optimistic because I believe that the human species is ingenious, and we're not suicidal. And so we will solve these problems.
Yes, so many moments, but the one I'll mention is we're at the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. And, you know, 20 years ago, I was early in my career working on environmental justice, which is an I want to thank Steve for his work, the Superfund law, and a lot of anti-toxic laws. Really, I was helping to apply to communities that are overburdened with pollution. And so I was working at very local levels and also with the EPA and others on this question of environmental contamination, environmental justice for the most impacted communities. And then Hurricane Katrina hit, and it really kind of pulled the wool from our eyes over how climate, although it impacts and climate change affects us all, there are particularly vulnerable communities all over the world. We just saw Hurricane Melissa really kind of hit the Caribbean and Jamaica and small islands that are contribute almost nothing to the problem. So Hurricane Katrina, I think, was a wake-up moment for environmental justice issues, and we saw a lot of folks shifting to environmental and climate justice. And despite a challenging environment now, very proud to be working with New York City and the state and others on continuing, and the climate school itself, in continuing the push to focus on these issues that are so important for, I think, the most vulnerable folks around the world. So that was a moment 20 years ago, Hurricane Katrina.
I hate these questions because they make me realize how long I've been here. I feel like I just got here, but upon further reflection.
You think, Jason?
You did just get here. You did just get here.
And you know, it makes me, as far as these kinds of questions, it makes me think of a lot of different events that have given me increased motivation and so on. But I'm going to say something that's going to make you all roll your eyes because, and yet it's real true. Last year, or this year, we launched 2 new programs. We launched the MS in Climate, and we launched the MS in Climate and Finance. And for many years, those of us working on developing these programs and seeing them through all the approval processes, just saw them on paper. And this was the first year that the students who are going to be getting degrees in this program arrived. And it was an incredible, inspiring moment to see this tangible manifestation of what we'd been working on come to fruition. And here's why I think that's significant. So a colleague of ours, Kate Marvel, once wrote that we don't need hope, we need courage in the context of the climate change problem. And so I don't consider myself necessarily optimistic or someone who dwells too much on hope, but I think that seeing the students come in who did gave me courage, because this is a problem that, as Steve said, is a long-term challenge. And we need more and more people putting their shoulder to the wheel with the right education and skills to really move the needle on this. And you know, in terms of things that have changed over the years, these kind of programs didn't exist when I was going to school. I wish they had, but they didn't. And suddenly, sustainability and climate education is everywhere. And I think that really speaks to the numbers of people who are coming into this field because they believe it's important, because they want to do it, because there's employment opportunities in these spaces. And we're growing, we're expanding, and I think it's really a sign of the moment that these kinds of things exist, and we're attracting so many bright, talented people into these programs. So for me, that's given me a lot of wind in my sails. It's given me a lot of courage, and seeing all of you here today is another measure of that.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. For my things, like for my personal, you know, like in career, what is actually the most important parts for making decisions? Because it's actually back to also like 20 years ago. So when I was a postdoc at Idaho National Laboratory, and at that time I was also international, you know, get the F1 visa. And so try to see what are my future career, what it looks like, right? I already have 2 years postdoc. And so now is that I could continue in postdoc, and you know that getting a faculty position, and especially for international students, is so difficult, especially in the United States. So, or go to the industry. So at the time I was get 2 offers. One is actually goes to get a petroleum company. They're looking into my publications, find my method using the stable isotope measurement to figure out the hydrogen carbon sources is very important for them. So they reached to me and then asked me to go to the interview. And I went to the California and then goes to the Oklahoma and then give 2 sides of the interview. And they give me offer right there. So that's great. So they give me a high salary, much higher salary than postdoc. They give me like 120K each year, and not including the end year of dividends. And so, and my postdoc salary is only 35K. You think about it, right? So, so at that time I was really, because it was which way I should go, right? So because 120K, and also they are said that they promised to give me, like apply for visa and also a green card for me. And so, and also one is continuing to do this poor and, like a salary. And then at the time, I also get another offer from the Washington University in St. Louis. They give me another offer postal for 1 year. It's a very difficult decision because I have my wife wouldn't work, and I also have like a 1 year old son. So with the 35K, I was like, what can I do? So then at that time, then I was finally my decision, especially with my wife's support, that I feel more happy in the became education, doing the research on environmental science rather than go to the industry. Doesn't mean that we shouldn't go to the industry, but this is my personal choices. So that's really a difficult time, but also I'm glad I'm not regret right now to make that decision. And so one thing, for this kind of things that what you really stay hopeful for this field. To me, I think that as Steve Cohen mentioned, we are a smart person, we are intelligent. So we have the trouble with creating the problem, we probably can solve the problem, especially for the plastic things. Plastic, is basically coming out of human activities, right? So since 1950s, exponentially increased over the time, right, productions. And so how we can solve this problem? One thing we are doing is that right now, we know there was a negotiation in the UN, United Nations, of the plastic treaty, global treaty. And so one of the stick point is that there were several countries who don't want to sign the, the agreement because they are petroleum producing countries and also produce a lot of the plastics waste. So we are right now working with them. And we're pretty sure when we really reach to the, figure out the sustainable solution for them, they're going to sign the agreement. So that's my hope. I think I agree with everyone that really we should working together to solve the problems. Thanks.
Professor Sachs.
Great, thank you. Well, for me, there wasn't a particular moment because this is all I've ever done. My interest actually straight out of undergraduate and then graduate school, my training is in law and policy, was always on achieving sustainable development. I think what I would, and even before climate change, it was more broadly on sustainable development. I think what I'd emphasize, which continues to give me hope, is that what are climate goals for the world, for many regions, are aligned completely with other development objectives. For instance, affordable access to reliable and resilient energy, or resilient and efficient buildings, or transport mobility that improves lifestyles and reduces traffic and air pollution and so on. So in much of the world, the commitment remains completely unabated, in large part because the climate goals align very much with what societies know they're working toward for good, livable, decent, productive societies. So I will just mention that a part of the reason I'm here in Asia, I think I already said, is working with with ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, that is working toward a integrated, decarbonized energy system, which is critical for global climate goals. But for the region, the imperative is to have access to adequate, affordable, resilient, reliable energy to support a competitive, growing economy in digital infrastructure and industrial goods and low carbon fuels and so on. So here it's an energy and economic imperative, and there's genuine political commitment and a lot of support from partners. So it's absolutely motivating and affirming to continue to work on our joint agenda in many parts of the world.
Thanks, Professor Sachs. So what we're going to do now is open up questions for our faculty panel. So if you have a question, please raise your hand and wait for one of my colleagues to come to you with a microphone. So Maria, we have a question over here.
Hi, my name is Bial, obviously a prospective student. Just wanted to say thank you so much, first of all, for all of your valuable insights and kind of bring your own perspectives on all the programs that Columbia has with sustainability and climate. I have two main questions. They're pretty brief. My first one pertains to research specifically. I think we all kind of have heard of funding cuts in research and stuff like that. Yesterday, I just met someone whose NSF grant got cut, and they were doing research here at Columbia. So I wanted to know like what the research landscape looks like given the current funding cuts.
And what was your
And
second?
then my second question was, if if there's like a career advisor or some kind of like academic advisor that works with you throughout your time at Columbia to kind of help you navigate the post-grad process after, or just like building your career, because I think that is still like a difficult thing to figure out on your own.
Let me try both of those. So on the research, it's true. The U.S. federal government is bailing on funding for research, and so for at least the next 3 years, we're going to see this landscape radically changed. My own research group has never gone after U.S. federal grant money, in part because I was always a little suspicious about the federal government since I used to work there. And so our funding comes from internal revenue and also from gifts. And so we don't have that. But the Lamont Observatory, I can tell you, is heavily dependent on federal money, and that is an issue for us. On the career issue, in the two programs that I direct, we have a very heavy emphasis on career advising. In the Sustainability Management program, we have something called the Career Design Lab. It's actually located in Midtown. We have specific coaches for our program, but also every student in both of my programs has a faculty advisor, and one of their jobs, besides guiding you through the curriculum, is providing professional advice. I personally provide professional counseling probably to 100 or so students a year, and many of us have lots of connections into the world of work, and so we help facilitate that. We also do a lot of co-curricular activities where there'll be a panel discussion, and then after the panel discussions, the most important part is the wine, cheese, and beer reception, where you mingle with graduates. And I always advise my students not to spend all of your time hanging out with your friends, but to go meet people you don't know, and they take advantage of that. New York City is the home of networking. Just to give you the broad outline, the U.S., despite all the things you're hearing from Washington, is still the richest country in the world, and the U.S. economy is the largest, and this region, the 20 million people that live within an hour of where I'm sitting, this region is the center of economic activity in the United States. And so there are lots and lots of opportunities, but what I always say to my students is they don't come to you, you have to go to them. And in fact, I just gave a talk to my ESP students to say, you know, from now till the time you graduate, 20% of your time should be devoted toward informational interviewing and networking, and we're all here to help you do that. The Climate School and its faculty are all connected because of our desire to have an impact. So the key to employment in this field is to connect and to stay active, become part of student groups, get out there and talk with people, and don't just hang out on College Walk.
Just very quickly on the funding environment, I'm going to give it a slightly different take. I mean, I think it's fair to say, yes, it's a challenging environment. It's an evolving environment, which means that it's true. People's grants have gotten cut. Some people have been able to change the titles, change the focus, and continue. There is still funding coming out of the federal government. I think there will be funding coming out of the federal government, but the priorities have shifted. And so I think there's a question of the match of various priorities. And I also want to say, you know, we're in a state that also is funding research. So you have to remember, in particular in the energy transition, state policy is quite bullish here in New York. And so, and then of course foundation. So yes, it's a challenging environment, but I think it's an evolving environment as well.
I think I have some authority as someone who had a grant canceled. Beizhan, did you?
I have been canceled, but returned.
Oh, I got just fully canceled.
Resurrected. Huh?
Mine hasn't come out of the ashes yet.
Keep hope alive.
Yes, it actually is just stop work to ordered, so it's just in limbo. Anyway, I want to lean into that broad capacity issue that I brought up earlier. So it's absolutely true that a lot of what we do, a lot of our endeavor here is supported by the federal government, and it's been a difficult time. Mm-hmm. But there have been difficult times in the past, and I think one of the ways you have to think about the landscape is that while the federal funding is important, when you have the large capacity that we have here, obviously we're thinking about other ways of doing this. So Steve and Sheila mentioned private funding. There are other sources of funding that can be sought, and I think that's part of what's happening. So while it's a large endeavor supported by the federal government in many ways, I think it's also a large endeavor that has the capacity to adjust and chase other funding sources. And so that's what's happening right now. And I think that while the size of the enterprise here might be something that scares you with regard to the funding, I think it actually makes us much more nimble and able to adjust as we move forward. And I think that's what we're seeing happening. So that's what I would say about the funding. As far as the career question, I just want Mindy and Gerald to raise their hands in the back of the room. They head our Office of Career Placement, or whatever the hell we're calling it these days. But anyway, they have a whole team. So I'm sure you're going to talk to them. There's a whole office within the climate school that works to help our students from the day that they get here to think about their career paths and career placement. The more broad subject of advising, the advising works a little differently in each program. But again, man, I'm a broken record. I'm just going to lean into the broad capacity here. And so for those of us who direct programs, one of the things that we do is we serve as principal point of contact within our programs, but we also play traffic cop in terms of sending people to different specialists, different experts in various areas pending their interests. So one of the philosophies that we have here is we certainly want a robust advising structure, but we also want something that's fairly flexible that allows us to send you to the people working in specific areas that are going to give you the most helpful domain-specific advice. And so that's another way that this is done, and it's another thing that's possible because of our capacity.
Yeah, I can add a little bit. So in terms of the research funding, I understand that the concerns about that, but Lamont Doherty, as I mentioned, is big, and we have a lot of talent research there, so they can diverse their research. For example, like of course the NSF get a cut, but we also have more right now from the NIH, National Institute of Health. For example, I just got a news about like 2 weeks ago. We got a largest in R1 fundings of like $5 million into our research program. And also we're really diverse, but not only do the, like NOAA, and also right now, not only NSF, but also NOAA, NIH, and also private foundations. So we really try to working hard to keep our program running, keeps our lab still have the water and the air passing through, right? So everything that we are doing is try to, to not adjusting ourselves. But if I think about this is a leading research institute. The researchers has a capacity to adjusting themselves and then looking for funding for their future, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that this is good to me. I think we of course, it will be a difficult time, but we're still working hard to try to get it fixed. Yeah.
Lisa, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I'll add myself to the fortunate side of the panel where we've had maybe 50 projects or more, no, definitely more over the years, never from the federal government, always from, we work with the private financial sector, with public financial institutions, with development finance institutions, with other government donors, with philanthropies. And what I will just say in all seriousness is that the work is only increasing. The opportunities are only increasing, actually, on that side of things, in part to compensate a bit, in part because the imperatives are real and more are committing. So we've been fortunate in that respect to have even a growing and growingly diverse number of opportunities, which involve our students as well. On the career side, I will just say every program does this, but let me speak specifically to the climate finance program, that one of the things I'm absolutely committed to as an equally core part to the courses is having the students hear from and meet the extremely diverse range of practitioners who are engaging with climate and finance. It's not just the private financial sector, it's not just Wall Street, but there are so many different practitioners in different types of financial institutions, from insurance to the public sector to green banks to the capital markets to within corporations, to civil society, to the UN and others. And they are actually eager and excited to come speak to the students. When we launched the program last year, we had a tremendous outpouring of interest from these practitioners to come and participate in some way in the program. So to my mind, meeting these practitioners, both to learn about career opportunities, but also to support the networking, is an absolutely core part of the program.
Other question?
Hello, thank you for speaking. My name is Vanessa Liu. I'm also a candidate, and I have two questions. So the first is relating to the distinction between undergrad and graduate roles, particularly in on-campus research opportunities or in teaching assistantship opportunities, but would love to know what the interaction is there. And I have a second sort of follow-up question specifically for Lisa. I was just curious because you'd mentioned, a strong optimism in identifying areas where sustainability development priorities and our general interest in advancing, improving the health of our climate and how those things tend to overlap. But I also think too, for example, like the increase in coal usage in Germany and China during periods of energy security concern, and also changing sort of global economic and political climate. And so, I mean, I consider myself a very strong optimist. That's why I'm here. But at the same time, I see strong areas of global tension and economic tension around the world where those areas of overlap are not as clear and are not as believed in as they were in, for example, the peak era of COVID, where we had masses of sustainability funding or lots of climate fundraising in the VC space, et cetera. And a lot of that has since dwindled down. Globally, we're seeing a retracting, maybe less in the EU, but a retracting of global climate commitments across countries. People are pulling away from their net zero goals that they once set in 2021, for example. And so a lot of things are also in many ways falling apart. And so, sorry, I would love to know sort of what inspires this confidence and where do you see in areas of real tension, real hope? Would love to hear about that. Thank you.
I want to mention one thing in response to you just before we get to the detail. So I've been working at this for 50 years. And at the beginning, the environment was a fringe issue. Nobody paid attention to it. Today, it's at the center of economic, political, diplomatic activity. So yeah, there's always 2 steps forward, 1 step back. That's just the nature of things. But if you look at the overall picture of the number of people paying attention to this and working in this area, it's incredibly larger than it was when I got started. And yeah, I mean, there's always going to be a tug and pull. I mean, here in New York, if we decarbonize too quickly, we're going to increase the homeless problem. And so we have to pay attention to many goals, not just one. But I think the awareness and understanding and the visibility and salience of this issue is tremendous. And that's really what gives me confidence, and I'm sure Lisa feels in some ways the same way.
So first of all, yes, to absolutely the complexity and the trade-offs in some places. What gives me hope in this context is that I really genuinely believe that we have solvable challenges, and that being informed and ambitious and innovative but pragmatic is a compelling approach. And it is, and not the rest of the world doesn't always operate with those same, and often doesn't, with those same
can add a little bit. So, for example, we have a really many and a good, like a good example before, right? So, for example, we previously have issues with lead. Lead was added into the gasoline. And then you can look into the Central Park Lake. If you the lake, the concentrations of the lead was dramatically exponentially increased over the time since like 1950s. And then after 2000, you can see the dropping also very quick. The power reason we phased out the lead from the like gasolines. Another issue is like ozone depleting materials. Like we say like we signed the Montreal protocols and we solve the problem, right? So I'm looking into the plastic pollution as well. Right now, it's much more complicated for the carbon footprint, reduce the carbon footprint, and reduce the plastic footprint. It is much more complicated. But the whole society is working together. For example, that the United Nations, right now we only have 7 countries. We have 207 was try to, we have 207 try to sign it, but we also have 7 countries we need to, convincing them how to do the sustainable solutions for them when they are trying to worry about their GDPs. So I would still hope to that.
And I'll answer the first question that you asked about teaching assistantships and research assistantships. There are plenty of them, either at the partner program schools or the Columbia Climate School, and we advertise these positions as they come to us. However, I will say that it's also a huge university, so there are departments within the university that our students have gotten TAs and RA positions. But it's really about, we can offer you, these are the opportunities, but I also encourage students to take the initiative, and if there is a professor you want to work with, or if there's a class that you really want a TA for, go out and look for it.
Yeah, I can add into there because that, I teach course ESP program and also teach course in sustainable science programs. And each time when I try to find the TA, I sometimes have difficult to find a TA because they have many other opportunities. And for example, I also want someone doing research in RA, in my research in the lab. I have a difficult time to find the person who has the, don't have the, other job, because typically they always can find opportunities very quickly, yeah.
So we have time for one more question.
I have a number of questions.
Well, maybe 2 if it's a short question. Okay, right here.
Hello, thank you. My name is Celine Kumbaraja, also potential candidate, and currently work on participatory climate finance governance at the World Bank. So very quick question on just what kind of global opportunities there are might be across the different programs. Thank you.
For employment or everything at Columbia is global. I'm serious. It's, I'm the most parochial person around, and I cannot only focus on New York anymore. And so, we are all traveling, we're all working, our connections are global. It's ubiquitous. I have to say that if you want to see a place that is international, come to New York City. First of all, 40% of the people who live here were born in other countries. This is really a place that, if you're interested in global opportunities, this is the right city to be in.
Let me just give one quick example. We have a studio class that is offered through our master's programs. There are multiple travel classes and these kinds of experiences, but one specifically is a studio class that we do in partnership with the architecture school, and students travel to site-specific locations to address climate adaptation and mitigation projects in country. And those countries have included Colombia and Brazil over the last couple of years, but there are lots of those kinds of opportunities as well in the curriculum.
Okay, one more question.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. My name is Blake Crawford. I'm a senior environmental science major from Chicago, Illinois, and I attend Tennessee State University. And my question was for Dr. Cohen, actually. I was looking at some of the organizations for the School of Professional Studies, SPS, for sustainability management. There's a sustainability management net impact, and it's kind of like environmental pro bono consultant kind of organization.
Right.
I was wondering, is there like a conflict of interest for your capstone project, or can you interweave those two for like a larger, broader project?
So it's actually very simple. Our capstone projects are only done for public sector, nonprofit or government organizations, because we want to create, as the lawyers have a pro bono tradition in our field. The students in the group you're describing do projects for private sector clients They select them. It's a totally student-driven thing. I'm an advisor to it, but this is a totally student-oriented activity. And frankly, I've always had a problem with students paying tuition to go work for free for a private sector firm making money off of their labor. But I don't have any problem if we're doing that for WEAC, the local environmental justice group, or for the EDF, or for a local government outside the U.S. that needs our help. So there's no conflict of interest, but they're very different activities. And the students, I have to say, throughout our programs are really active in trying to deploy their skills as they learn them to clients in all forms. But this is a totally student-oriented and student-run activity, and there's no conflict of interest, I don't think.
We have time for one more question.
Good morning, guys. My question was for Dr. Foster. I was curious, why isn't the environmental climate justice class taught in every program? And how did you guys decide that?
It's slightly above my pay grade.
I can add, so
Or Lisa, who runs the finance, may be able to speak to that.
Actually, there are many environmental justice courses throughout all of our programs, and sustainability management has a bunch, SEPA has a bunch, and students do enroll in those as electives. So, and I have to say that
I
also.
think he's talking about the core. For
No, I know, but
yeah,
also,
masters.
I also think that in our capstones, every student is focusing on environmental justice issues. This is really, even if the project is only tangentially related to it, they make sure it's part of it. So this is an important part of the curriculum of every one of these
I
programs.
agree. It's a focus across.
Yeah.
Maybe if I can just quickly address it from the climate finance program's perspective, where first I should just mention that one of the privileges of the climate finance program is that the students also take core classes at the business school in fundamentals, evaluation, and corporate finance and capital markets and climate risk. So there are many classes, but even so we wanted to find a balance. There's a new class, but that's not my answer. I just am explaining the differences among the core classes. The climate finance students also take a class that I teach on international climate finance, which to my mind is 100% climate justice in an international context, because what climate finance is who's paying for what, for whose benefit, who's bearing costs, who's bearing the risks, and so on. And what we study in the whole program, but also in the classes we teach, is what are the structural determinants, how do new instruments and new approaches shape the distributional components of climate finance. So I wish that we had 5 years to study all these critical components, but what I will just say is that the questions of distributional justice and in climate is absolutely central to our thinking about climate finance instruments and structural determinants.
very specific issue of the climate justice core class. We put it in the MA and the MSc, and in conversation with Lisa about the balance between the other core classes that they needed and the fact that justice is represented in the course that she is teaching, we felt that the justice issue was addressed in this course, and so that's how it kind of separated out practically in those three programs.
Yeah, also same here as the sustainability science program, almost the environment justice is always in the part of the curriculum in every course. So for example, my political pollution and sustainable solutions, that's always almost like 1/4 of the course material was focused on how we can solve these environment justice issues related to the political pollutions. Yeah.
All right, thank you, and please join me in thanking our panelists. Okay, and because you've all been wonderful, we're going to give you a 5-minute break for bathrooms. There are bathrooms here on the 3rd floor, and there's also bathrooms on the 1st floor if these are full. Okay, thank you.